of these, like, boom, just so we know it's our starting point. So hey, everybody, my name is Andres from the Baking Steel Test Kitchen. We've got Craig here as like our moderator behind the scenes, answering the questions and helping out along the way. Today, we're gonna make probably my second favorite recipe from our book, Baking with Steel, or just our second favorite recipe on a baking steel is English muffins. These are, you know, we're always pushing them as legendary, and it's actually pretty meaningful. We actually mean that too. These things are awesome. We've tried a bunch of different recipes, different strategies as far as making them, and I think we found a way to replicate what Thomas's was to us as kids, or to me as a kid anyway, because they were crispy, crunchy, but they didn't really have a lot of flavor. And so we've kind of found a way to make that happen. Is that cool? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the whole English muffin making process. We're gonna start with making the dough, and then we're gonna make what we call our English muffin balls. And then we've got things staged here to help that process, so we can expedite a little bit. I've got up pretty early this morning and made a batch, or from yesterday's batch, and we've been letting these proof literally about 4 hours now. And they're, I wouldn't say doubled in size, but they're starting to rise. They're gonna be beautifully ready to cook in about 15 minutes or so, which is awesome. So I always cover them so that you know. But first, we're gonna make the dough. And I know a lot of people are having troubles getting flours. And so if you have an option, all-purpose flour is great. We love organic. We're happen to use Bob's Red Mill because this is the last bag they had at the store last week. And it's a really nice flour. It's organic, which is our preference. I know today it's tight. It's hard to find it. So we like all-purpose because it's a little bit softer. But if all you have is bread flour, fine. If all you have is 00, it'll work too. Just keep that in mind. There's no right or wrong answer, but we've kind of done some research and we find all-purpose a little bit softer. Does that make sense? And we're gonna do questions and answering. You guys can ask throughout this too, and we'll try to sprinkle some answers in, but at the end of this, we can get down to all the questions. All right? Awesome, you guys. Let's rock it. All right. If you were here with us last week, we made our dough. Couple of things you need to have is a scale. Scale is mandatory for bread making, pizza making, because we really need to dial in our recipes, and it's all based on that water to flour ratio. It's super critical, especially for pizza dough, especially for English muffins. You just want to dial it in. The only way to do that is with a scale. Make sense? So I've got bread flour here, and this is 550 grams. And then we have salt, yeast, and we're using a little bit of cane sugar just to give these a little bit of sweetness. The kids seem to like that a lot. So all we do is we measure out our ingredients separately, and then we combine all the dry ingredients together, and we kind of whisk them into this mixture. So I'm gonna add my sugar in, I'm gonna whisk it a little bit, I'm gonna add my salt, right? I'm gonna whisk it, and I'm gonna add my yeast, and I'm gonna whisk it. And that's Fleshman's Active Dry Yeast. It's about 1 gram, maybe 1.5 grams. I think it's one gram. And I just whisk all my dry ingredients together. Super simple, like this is not a difficult recipe to make. The secret is to do it ahead of time. So if I want English muffins tomorrow, I need to make my dough today, because this is a 24-hour dough. That makes sense. And can you cheat it? Like, can you do this in 3 or 4 hours? Yes. Have we done it? Yes. It's good. It's actually very good, but we just prefer at least 24 hours to make it legendary. Does that make sense? All right. So now the water it's room temperature. I forgot, I'm just gonna add in some olive oil. I'm sorry, avocado oil. We used to use butter or clarified butter, in this recipe, but we've taken that out and substituted a different fat. We just love avocado oil. It works beautifully. It cooks beautifully in this. And I think it's a little bit healthier. It makes these vegan, if that matters. And you can see, I'm just gonna add my oil. I zeroed out my scale. I'm gonna add 20 grams of oil right into my other liquid. So I only have one container for that, if that makes sense. And now I'm gonna do is pour in. Let's listen to that sound. My oil into the flour mixture, and I'm just gonna mix. And before I dump it out onto the table, I like to combine as much as I can. And what I'll do, so I did this last night because I knew we had class today, and I wanted to have everything staged for you guys. You can see this big mixture. Our friends over at GIR, these rubber spatulas are super handy. I just scrape my bowl. And these are called Cambro containers. You can get these on Amazon. What we love about them is they have lids and they cover themselves, which is awesome. So now what I'm gonna do is take this mixture and literally just, I'm gonna get one more thing. At least I have a spatula. Sorry about this, guys. I like my bench scrapers. And I'm just gonna work this a little bit, and I'm gonna press the flour and the water together. Right? You guys can see what I'm doing here. I'm gonna press the water and the flour together just to get rid of any like dry clumps of flour. And I might do this for 2 minutes or so. And in case anybody's asking, we're gonna send this recipe to everybody on the email list again. But this will make, depending on the size, between 10 and 12 English muffins. And you can see, I'm just kind of pressing this together. It's starting to get sticky, which is kind of my tell that this thing is just about mixed enough. Whereas now I can take this out of here. I've pressed all the kind of dry clumps out of it. And now what I'll do is I'll take this big bulk of dough. I'm gonna put it back into my container. And if I don't have this type of bowl, I can just use saran wrap on top. But for this one, I just cover it up, make it nice airtight. And I'm gonna let this thing, close it up. Because it's the bulk of the dough, I call this the bulk fermentation. And we let this sit at room temperature. Now here is a variable that, I got all this flour in my hands, just scrape this off here for a second. Here's a variable that we get a lot of questions on, and I change my tune on this quite a bit. Excuse me for 1 second. I'll be back, I'll be back. So as far as the fermentation goes, hi, I'm back. This dough needs to we'd like to proof it for 24 hours. What I've been doing lately is I take this, if I make it in the morning, I let it sit at room temperature for about 8 to 10 hours. It's gonna start to rise. Then before I go to bed, I'm gonna put this into the refrigerator to cold ferment it overnight. Because the next day is when I make my, like we call those dough balls for the English muffins. And we find it's much easier to work the dough when the dough is cold. It's super sticky. If it's not cold, it's really gonna stick to your hands. So we like to use cold. And it's still fermenting, it's still proofing, it's still getting some flavors going on. However, it's just not gonna be as sticky. Does that make sense? All right, so now, because we have this class, I made a batch of this last night, which is here. And this has been in the fridge overnight. It's still cold. I just pulled it out a few minutes ago. This is the dough. I've removed some of it so it doesn't look as big as it could be to make our balls, but I'm gonna make a few dough balls now with this. And this is a little tricky, but not hard. Skill level, what do you think, Chef?
4 to 6, depending on the person.
4 to 6, yeah. And this is interesting. So I like to make my English muffin balls about, what we do, about 90 grams, 85 to 95 grams, which is, you know, the size of a hamburger bun almost.
Yeah, it makes about, you know, 10, 11, or 12, depending on the size you want to make your English muffins.
Right, we've done big ones before, which is kind of fun, but I just kind of replicate what goes in those Thomas's bags, right? Those 6-packs they would sell, or bays, 6-packs. So we kind of do the same size. And I'm guessing around 85 to 95 grams on those. So in order to get that, I need to measure my my batter. So I'm going to take this dough out of here. I'm going to take some of it out, not all of it. Let me see if I got a knife here. I'll just cut this here. So I'm not going to make a bunch of dough balls. I'm going to show you how to do a few of them. Okay, so here's my dough. I've got my scale. I'm going to measure out about 90. Oh, that's a little heavy. 95 grams. We'll try that first. So I'm going to do a couple of these. I always get that backwards. Stage left, stage right. Everything's opposite. So here we go. I got my 2 English muffins. Let's try 2. And I like to have 1 clean hands and a clean work surface, okay? And this is wood, which is nice. Some people have granite or something. It'll work there as well. You might want to sprinkle a little bit of flour, but the really way to do this is I'm going to kind of hold my hand like a claw and just make like a round circle. As I'm pressing in a little bit, you can see, I'm going to try to get a close up here so you guys can see this. I'm going to take my hand and just lightly press it and turn like this. And as I press, it's starting to form a round, right? You can see I've got this round ball. Isn't that cool? I'm gonna do that again for you. So, but first, I take my sheet tray. I take some semolina flour. I press it down here, and I kind of just coat this ball in semolina flour. It's gonna help this thing not stick, which is kind of key later on. All right? So let's take another one. And again, I've cleaned my surface off because this is really sticky dough. Even though it's cold, it's a little bit easier. I'm gonna press and turn. See, I'm doing like the claw, right? If you get really good at this, you can do 2 at a time. Craig can do that. I can't yet. Look at that.
Three hands is better than 2. 3
hands, right? So get that ball. Isn't that awesome? So now I take this, again, into the semolina flour. And I kind of just spin it around, coat it nice. And I'm gonna let these proof, and here is the secret to good English muffins. We're gonna let these proof for like 4 or 5 hours. What does our recipe call out? 3 or 4 hours maybe?
Yeah.
I guess it's gonna vary on the time of year too. We may have done that recipe in the summer where it's gonna be a little faster, but it's winter and I don't keep the test kitchen that warm overnight. So it's like 68 in here right now, which is cool, but I'm gonna let these proof for literally like 3 or 4 hours. Let me see if you guys can see these. Okay? And they're ready to rock and roll.
Wrap them in plastic, yeah?
What's that?
You wanna wrap those in plastic?
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap those in plastic, like so. Boom. So we did these earlier this morning. I got up early, made some of these balls so we could have them, set up for class. These have been proofing for 4 hours, and they're ready to rock and roll. I've got semolina coated. The plastic wrap comes off, and I'm going to show you the difference. The difference between a non-proof and a proof. You can see. I don't know if you guys can see a close-up of this, but like the size of this, same exact size. But you see how it's starting to proof? It's starting to rise and kind of fill out here. The air bubbles are all ready to rock and roll. These things are ready to cook. This one, the gluten's just still too tight. It needs to relax. And we find 4 hours awesome. Cool? All right. Does that make sense? So when we pause here, Chef, for a couple of questions, I just turned on my, my griddle, my mini griddle, because we're going to fry these off in some avocado oil shortly. And so I could use clarified butter. I could use other fats too. We have found clarified butter better than butter because you're removing those milk solids. So you're getting a little higher smoke point or burning point. We don't want to make black English muffins. Believe me, I've done it. It's not that great. The kids reject them. And then we found avocado oil. We were trying to do this vegan thing and just find the avocado oil really rocks. It's got a higher smoke point. It helps these things cook really evenly. And we find it's beautiful for English. All right. Any questions, Chef? Let's go through some questions here.
Yeah, do you want to talk about sourdough starter for yeast?
Great question. So if you want to substitute out, and this pretty much goes for, I shouldn't say all recipes, but breads and pizzas and English muffins, just substitute in 20%, remove 20% of the flour and add back in your starter. Does that make sense? So in other words, remove flour and water. So if I'm going to add in 100 grams of starter, which is 20% of the recipe, I'm going to remove 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water as a replacement. And that's an even swap. It'll cook. It'll be beautiful. Make sense? That makes sense, Chef? I get that right?
Yeah, totally.
All right.
Sourdough muffins, whole wheat flour. Yes, things with whole wheat flour.
Oh, great question.
Definitely change the hydration level, right?
Yeah, you'll change that hydration. Typically what I do with whole wheat is I'll just sneak in. So if I'm using 500 grams of all-purpose flour, I will sneak in 10% of that as whole wheat. I might sneak in 5% of that as spelt flour. And basically what you're doing is you're adding a little bit of different textures into the flour, into the dough. It just makes it really like nutty and flavorful, and maybe a little healthier too. So I do that quite often. And don't be afraid to, and don't be shy. Just try different things, try different combos. But with whole wheat, be a little careful because it tends to get very dry. So anything more than 20% might be pushing the envelope too much.
Yeah, and we've definitely played with higher hydrations too. Didn't we do one at like 80 or 82% one day too?
That's a great question. And if you really want to emphasize those nooks and crannies, we find by upping that hydration level makes them have more holes, which we kind of like. The more nooks, it just makes that flour really difficult and really sticky. So be careful with that.
And for those who are asking about hydration level, basically it's just the ratio of water to flour. So if you have 500 grams of flour and you want 80% hydration level, 80% of 500 is 400, and that's where you get your amount of water per recipe. Most bakers' percentages are based around your flour content first.
It totally makes sense.
How about the best ratio for proofing on counter versus fridge? How long for each, vice versa? Oh, that's a good question. For the bulk ferment, which I like to do first for these, if you can get to 24 hours, that's ideal. But if you can only get to 12, I would do 6 at counter and 6 in the fridge. So whatever you can do for hours, so take your total hours and just divide it in half. If I can only do 8 hours, I'm gonna do 4 at room temperature and 4 cold. Does that make sense? And the reason we're doing cold is so when we make our dough balls, it just makes that dough easier to handle. Because that's probably the trickiest thing about English muffins, is making those little balls. Time frame to make hot muffins in the morning. I would say you could probably the day before in the morning make your dough, get it in the fridge at some point, and maybe ball them up right before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. If you want to have these like tomorrow morning, just make them today. I mean, it's really the best.
Yeah, toast them in the morning. Yeah, toast in the morning. They're so good. In fact, I'm happy I made this batch, but I also made, in front of you guys, another batch. So I've got like 20 coming my way. Don't tell anybody.
How long on the preheat for the griddle?
Good question. So I just fired it up a few minutes ago, and it's probably like 5 minutes. I'm using my, and I'm gonna take you guys over there in a second. I'm using my IR gun. You guys see me over here? And it's just about there. My gun's kind of shady right now, but we can give that like 30 more seconds, and it'll be ready. So how I preheat my mini griddle is I literally fire it up almost up to high, like blast that heat out. And this goes for any of our griddles or any griddles for that matter. Get the heat going super high so it helps kind of spread the heat throughout that pan or tray or steel, whatever it might be. And then you drop the heat down. And especially now, here's where the baking steel comes in, because it's 3/8 thickness and it's 20 pounds of steel, it distributes heat super evenly, which is great. And I've got this thing probably cranked up. I'll show you guys. I just use this my infrared gun here, which is I think broken, but we're about 200. It keeps rejecting on me, but we're probably about 250 degrees, 280. We're probably just about where I want to be. So I'm going to drop that temperature down now, so we can do some cooking. So we said skinny side. Hey, everybody. I'm going to move this over to here so you guys can kind of see what's going on. Is that okay with the light, Chef?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. You guys see that? All right. I'm going to do one more temperature check. And this is, if you don't have a gun, you have to rely on just tribal knowledge and practice. You could take some, like an ice cube or something like this.
Or just flick water or something too.
I could take like an ice cube. You can see how quickly this is going to melt. That doesn't really give me a sense. I can see these like tiny bubbles. I know this thing's pretty ripping hot right now. I'm looking at almost 300. So I think I'm pretty happy with that temperature. We like to fry in avocado oil. So what I'm going to do is add some down here. A good amount. It's kind of almost covering the entire surface. And carefully I can kind of just help this oil get all around. And now,
guys, you can see probably like the oil's kind of shimmering and it's slowly starting to smoke. That's right where you want to be. You don't want it to be smoking immediately, but you also don't want it like coagulating. That'll be too cold.
Right, and you'll know the difference. You'll probably hear a little bit of a sizzle. So here's my English. I'm going to put this down in the oil. Can you see that bubbling a little bit?
Yeah. Yep, that's what you're looking for.
What we're looking for. So now I'll put the next one down. I'm going to do 4 at a time here on the mini. And I like to time these for about, I'm going to put a timer on actually so I don't forget. I like this timer. Uh-oh. So we like to do about 5 minutes on each side. I'm going to just compensate a little bit for those few seconds I was gone. But you guys can see these things frying up right now. I feel pretty good about the temperature because they're bubbling a little bit. And really sometimes to test, if you're not really super confident, what you might want to do is just put one down first. Don't put the whole batch at the same time. Put one down, and then you'll know if it's too hot, you'll see that it'll brown too much. That make sense? So while we have these things cooking away, why don't we do a little Q&A again? Does anybody have any questions? How can we help?
Yeah, the shape of the muffins you just put down, does it get to that just by relaxing? Do you push it down at all after you proof them?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna push these down when we flip them. I'll show you guys.
But the original shape before you put them down is from relaxing.
Yep, from round. So we went from this, which these are the ones we just balled up, to those. And that's just from relaxing for, 4 hours, 5 hours. That's from relaxing it. So you really be chill. Don't want to go right from the fridge to the griddle. Let these things chill out for several hours at room temp. So good.
Do you need the griddle or can you use the original steel?
The original steel definitely works, but let me show you guys. Can you see the griddle now?
Yeah.
So we've got, I don't want to burn my computer either, but we've got a channel here for the griddle. I've got the fat pretty well spread out. You got to be really careful of that if you're not using the griddle, but it can definitely be done. We do it. Actually, we made these outside on a campfire last year, and they were awesome, right, Chef?
Yeah, they were fun.
Totally.
Or on the grill or something too, if you want.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna take a peek underneath, see how these things are cooking, and I'm really, really pleased what's going on there underneath. It's great. I don't think it's too hot. I think it's pretty much the right temperature, which is cool. You can see that? That's my mini. I love the mini. It's one of our favorites.
If you're gonna do the balls the night before, you cook them in the morning. Do you want the balls overnight on the counter in the fridge?
No, good question. We've done this before. So make the balls just like this. I will stick this whole sheet tray in the fridge overnight. Get up earlier than you anticipated, before you bake, and just take it out of the fridge. It's a nice way to do it. I'd just be a 12-hour proof at room temp if you're sleeping, or maybe you don't sleep for 12 hours, but maybe it's an 8-hour sleep or whatever it might be. It's probably just a little bit too long, depending on the time of year. Oh, you can see those things really starting to bubble up. Nice, they're beautiful.
Cast iron you can absolutely use if you don't want to use your
Great,
steel.
that sounds great. And I've seen people, by the way, use a lot more oil than what we're using here. I'm just kind of lightly coating the bottom of the baking steel, but you could add more in a cast iron pan, I guess, and really fry them up.
Can you use the mini on a ceramic cooktop? Yes, absolutely.
Totally can. Obviously, you need to be careful because it's heavy, but it's going to heat more evenly than anything else that you put on top, just by the sheer mass of this thing. It's 3/8 thick. Here's the skinny. You can see the thickness. This thing weighs, 22 pounds. How strong I am. 22 pounds of steel, but the thickness is what makes it really work so beautiful.
Induction, yes. All of our products work on induction, electric coils, gas, anything. Really, any heat source.
Any heat source. Okay, so that's been our 5 minutes. Let's go back to the oven. Let's go to camera 2. So now I know these things are ready to flip. Chef, can you see those? You see these size? See how these things have grown a little bit since we put them down? I'm going to take my spatula and just literally flip them over and then press down on each one. Flip it, right? And press down. And they got some really nice color. Press down. And they're really starting to proof a little bit. I'm trying to press things kind of evenly. How am I doing my press, everybody? Can you guys see these?
Good stuff.
They look amazing, yeah. So now my timer on for 5 more minutes. And I'll let these things continue to cook. I can, if I felt like it, add a little bit more oil. It'll help spread out. If you want, you don't have to. But I'm pretty happy with the temperature of my griddle. I might want to drop it just a little bit. Temperature-wise, that's gonna cook those things perfectly. The next, 3 or 4, 5 more minutes, we'll be done. Isn't that cool? Yeah. What else do we have?
Semolina versus cornmeal.
Oh, good question. Seen both. We just think that semolina flour doesn't burn as easy as cornmeal. And I like to find the grittiness of the semolina over cornmeal, which I guess you could grind that up more if you wanted to. That's corn. This is English muffins. Why do you want corn on our English muffins? My opinion.
That's a good question. I don't think we've ever frozen the dough before. I think we just went right to eating them all the time.
Ah, that's a great question. But here's what I do know. I'm just going to flatten these out a little bit again, too. Here's what I do know. Bread freezes like beautifully. So if that were me, I would make a dozen or two English muffins and then freeze the actual English muffins. Because they'll thaw out really fast, and it's better than freezing the dough, in my opinion. That would be my strategy. You agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah, I think so too. I think it would be better than freezing a dough ball and trying to go through that.
Yeah, totally. Okay, awesome. You guys see those things? Just take a look at them. Just take a little pause. Aren't they beautiful? So nice. All right. What else we got? Oops.
Now it's the fire hour. Rapid fire questions.
Yeah, go away, guys. Ask away, because we have. I'm just gonna cook these up, and then they literally need to cool for several minutes before we break them open. But figure on 10-minute cook time for the English muffins, and I'll just put a fresh batch of 4 on there after this, and I'll just keep repeating that until I'm out of dough. They're so good, delicious, legendary. Any other questions, guys?
Somebody wants bagels next class.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? We're going to try to do this every single week. So next Wednesday, we'll
Smash burgers.
Smash burgers would be fun. Totally. Oh, maybe we'll do smash burgers and bagels. How about bagel smash burger?
Smash burger on the English muffin would be pretty good.
Yeah, epic.
French bread class, like a baguette or something.
Sure.
Breads class.
I like that idea. You guys ready to try English muffins? Could you guys do these? Feel confident?
They're not that bad, right?
They're not that difficult. They're better than anything you'll ever eat in a store.
If you can't use avocado, olive or vegetable, absolutely.
Yep.
Dun, dun, dun. What else?
What else
were you able to get the griddle? Great question.
So all of our griddles are at bakingsteel.com, and we have our regular steels, the originals, and then we have all of our griddles. We have a few different sizes: the mini, the skinny, and the big griddle. All the preferences of size, essentially, dimensions, square centimeters, basically. They're awesome, legendary. And we make, by the way, that's the English muffins. I can flip that over and stick it in my oven and make pizza on it next. I can put it in my toaster oven. I can bring it to my grill and make smash burgers and steaks, fried eggs, pancakes, French toast, you name it. It's amazing. Even pancakes, by the way. Your first round, your second round, they're all the same. They're so well cooked. Anybody else have a question?
Our last pizza class. Yep, it's on YouTube.
All right, let's just take one last peek at these. Our timer, our trusty timer. So now you can see, if I flip these over, they're cooked, right? They're gorgeous. You can see both sides. I'll let these cool back on my sheet tray. I'm gonna let these sit for probably another 10 minutes before I break them open. I'll bring these over here so you guys can see them. Aren't they awesome? They're beautiful. Gorgeous English muffins. Hot, but gorgeous. Maybe I should try to rip one open. You're not supposed to do that.
Give it a few minutes.
Like a minute.
How would you clean the griddle when you're done making those?
Great question. Soap and water. I use a bench scraper first. I'm going to scrape it off, then the backside of a sponge, soap and water, and it'll clean it. Now, there is my favorite tool for cleaning my steel is a grill brick. This is made from Earthstone company in like New Mexico, and this is made out of recycled glass. So it's like a pumice stone. And I literally just lightly scour my steel in the sink the next day like this, and that helps keep this really smooth surface. If I have some oil caked on there and it's sticky to the touch and I can't get it off, this tool is incredible. And by the way, this works on anything, not just a baking steel, but also your grills, your pots and pans, you name it, everything. And we'll link to these in that email, Chef. We can do that, right?
Yep, it'll be on there.
Yeah, cool. What else we got? Anybody? I'm gonna peek, Chef. I'm gonna break the rules.
Love it.
These English muffins are still too hot. I just want to show you how I open these up, because a lot of people say fork. We don't use forks here. That's not how we roll. We lightly kind of sever the outside edge with a perforated knife, preferably. And this is still kind of too hot to be doing this, but
Serrated knife, not perforated, but it's all right.
oh, yeah. Serrated. And then I just kind of lightly pull, you can see, pull this thing apart. It's so hot, my hands are burning, but look at this. Isn't that amazing, right? And that's a 10-minute bake. Your legendary English muffins. So good. Awesome, can't wait to eat it. I toast them first though too. Caramelize those even more inside. Anybody else have a question?
We answered all of them. Everyone's loving them. They look great. Yes.
Oh, you guys rock. That was amazing. As always, you guys, comment. We're going to put this out again probably on Facebook and YouTube, but comment, like this, share this with anybody you know. We're all about baking steel and cooking at home together. And this has been, I guess, a really special time for that because of the quarantine that we're all under. A lot of family time, a lot of cooking time. So you're gonna have a lot of questions. Just email, info@bakingsteel.com or Andres or Craig @bakingsteel. And we are always here for you if you guys have any questions. And we thank you guys. We could not do this without you. So thank you. Super great.